The rain hadn't stopped since morning. It was as if the sky itself was mourning with me. I stood there, my black umbrella trembling in the wind, watching as my mother's coffin disappeared beneath the wet soil. Everyone cried except my father. He wasn't there. He was in Hawaii, smiling beside his new mistress, their champagne glasses raised as if celebrating my mother's death. When the last shovel of dirt hit the coffin, I whispered goodbye through clenched teeth. That night, lightning tore across the Portland sky as I sat alone in my apartment, staring at old photos of her. Then my phone buzzed. "I'm not dead. Come to the cemetery now." It was from her number, my mother's. My throat closed and my hands went cold. I grabbed my car keys, heart hammering. I didn't know if I was driving toward a miracle or madness. My name is Grace Miller, and until a week ago, I thought my life was normal. I had a small apartment overlooking the Wampt River, a job as a freelance designer, and a mother who called every Sunday to remind me to eat breakfast. I used to roll my eyes at her texts. "Take your vitamins, sweetheart. Don't skip dinner again." I never thought I'd miss them. The day she died started like any other. I was finishing a client project when an unknown number appeared on my phone. I almost ignored it, but some strange instinct made me answer. "Is this Miss Grace Miller?" The woman's voice trembled. "I'm calling from Portland General Hospital. I'm so sorry. Your mother passed away this morning. Sudden cardiac arrest for a moment. I couldn't breathe." The world tilted. Colors drained away. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "You've got the wrong person. My mom's fine. She was painting this morning." "I'm sorry," the nurse repeated softly. The words rang in my ears long after she hung up. I remember standing by the window, watching raindrops trace lines down the glass. My reflection ghostly pale. My mother, my best friend, my anchor was gone. And yet, deep inside, something didn't add up. She had no heart problems. She exercised, laughed easily, ate healthy. How could she just stop living? When I called my father, his tone was almost bored. "It's true," he said flatly. "Evelyn's gone. The doctor said it was quick. That's it." I snapped, my voice breaking. "That's all you have to say." A sigh. "Grace, she's dead. Cry if you need to, but don't be dramatic. I'll handle the paperwork." Then he hung up. That was the moment my grief turned to fire. Something inside me whispered that my father wasn't mourning. He was relieved. And that made me terrified to know why. 3 days later, the rain still hadn't stopped. It was as if the city itself refused to move on. The cemetery smelled of wet soil and leaves. People in black stood under umbrellas, murmuring condolences that barely reached my ears. I couldn't look away from the coffin. My mother's name, Evelyn Grace Miller, was engraved in gold. My throat burned. "You didn't deserve this," I whispered. Behind me, relatives whispered too. "Where's Richard? Her husband didn't even come. Disgraceful." I clenched my fist. My father had texted me the night before. "Busy with business overseas. Handle the funeral. No apologies, no shame, just business." When the priest began to pray, I felt my legs tremble. My cousin's little girl, Ava, tugged my sleeve. "Aunt Grace," she whispered, "if Grandma's in heaven, can she see us?" I knelt down, my voice breaking. "Yes, baby, she can see us. She's watching right now." As the coffin lowered, a cold gust swept through, snapping my umbrella inside out. The priest's words blurred into the rhythm of falling rain. Every drop felt like a heartbeat I couldn't reach anymore. When it was over, everyone left. Everyone except me. I stayed staring at the freshly turned soil until my knees sank into the mud. "Ma'am," I whispered, "if there's any justice in this world, he'll pay for what he's done to you. I promise." Lightning flashed far in the distance, a white scar across the dark sky. I took it as an answer. That night, I drove home soaked and hollow. I showered, changed into one of her old sweaters, and sat in the dark scrolling aimlessly through my father's social media. And that's when I saw his new post, a photo of him on a sunny beach, arm around a young woman with perfect hair. The caption read, "New beginnings." My heart stopped. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. While I buried my mother in the rain, my father was smiling under a tropical sky. Something inside me broke and something darker began to wake. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the apartment felt like a whisper from somewhere else. The storm outside howled through the cracks in my windows, and I kept seeing my mother's face the way she looked in the coffin, still and peaceful, too peaceful. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through photos on my phone. Mom holding her paintbrush, laughing in the garden. Mom teaching me how to bake apple pie. Mom hugging me after my first breakup. Every memory hit like a blade. Then my phone buzzed. At first I ignored it. Probably a condolence message from a friend. But then I saw the name on the screen. Mom. I froze. The blood drained from my face. Her number. The one I couldn't bring myself to delete. My heart stuttered as I opened it. One message: I'm not dead. Come to the cemetery now. For a long moment I just stared. My brain tried to find logic hack. Wrong number, cruel prank, but my body had already decided. I grabbed my coat and car keys and ran. The rain outside felt sharper, colder, almost intentional. My windshield wipers fought the downpour as I drove toward the cemetery, headlights slicing through sheets of water. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't. My mother's voice was in my head. Trust your heart, Grace, even when your mind is afraid. When I reached the gates, the place was drenched in fog. The lamps flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the gravestones. I parked, stepped out, and the wind immediately stole my breath. Mom, I called out, voice trembling, silence. Just the sound of rain on metal and stone. Then from the far end near the willow trees a faint shape moved. A figure small, hunched, wrapped in a soaked coat. Mom, my flashlight shook in my hand as I raised it. The beam caught her face, pale, fragile, but alive. Her eyes, those familiar hazel eyes, filled with tears. Grace, she whispered. My world shattered. The flashlight fell, landing in the mud with a dull thud. I stumbled forward, heart pounding in disbelief. Mom, how are you alive? She took my hands, her fingers ice cold but real. It's me, sweetheart, she whispered, voice breaking. But you can't tell anyone I'm alive. I stared at her, soaked and shaking as the rain poured harder, washing away the last line between life and death. I couldn't stop staring at her face. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Her hair matted with rain, but her eyes, they were alive. Real. My voice cracked. Mom, everyone saw you. I saw you. You were gone. She pulled me into a trembling hug. For a second, the world disappeared. The storm, the cemetery, the madness, it was just her heartbeat against mine, faint but steady. Then she whispered, Grace, we can't stay here. Someone could see us. We hurried through the rain to a small silver sedan parked under the trees. I climbed in, my body still shaking. Mom, please just tell me what's going on. She didn't start the engine right away. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Your father, she said finally. Richard, he tried to kill me. My stomach dropped. What? Her eyes filled with tears. He's not the man you think he is. For months, he's been threatening me, forcing me to transfer my shares of the company, my art studio, everything in my name. When I refused, he said he'd make me disappear. The words hit like lightning. I shook my head. That's insane. He's your husband, my father. Her voice cracked. He's a businessman, Grace. To him, people are assets or obstacles. And I stopped being useful. She told me about the night she died. Her chest had been aching for days, stress eating her alive. She collapsed while painting and their housekeeper panicked and called an ambulance. At the hospital, Dad arrived not with worry, but with documents. He wanted her to sign them while she could still hold a pen. When she refused, he walked out without looking back. But Mom wasn't alone. One of her old students, Martha, worked as a nurse at the hospital. Martha had seen bruises on Mom's arm weeks before and knew something wasn't right. She helped me, Mom whispered. She switched the records, made it look like my heart stopped. They used a mannequin in the body bag. While everyone believed I was gone, Martha drove me out through the back exit. I pressed a hand to my mouth. You faked your death. Tears streamed down her face. It was the only way to survive, Grace. Outside, thunder cracked so loud it rattled the car. I thought you'd be safe once I was gone, she said softly. But when I saw what he posted, New Beginnings, I knew he wouldn't stop. He'll come for everything, even you. I stared at her, my heart thundering louder than the rain. Then we stop him first. Her eyes widened. Grace, no, you don't know what he's capable of. I met her gaze, my voice steady. I know exactly what he's capable of. That's why we have to expose him. For a long moment, she just looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not as a daughter, but as someone who could finally fight back. Then she nodded, slow but certain. All right, but if we do this, we do it smart. No mistakes. The rain began to fade. leaving only the faint sound of water dripping from the tree. That was the moment I realized my mother didn't die in that hospital. She was reborn, and I was about to join her. By morning, the city felt different, colder, sharper, like it knew what I'd learned. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face at the hospital, calm, detached, as if my mother's death were just a line on a spreadsheet. Mom stayed hidden in a safe house on the outskirts of Portland. Her friend Martha checked on her every few hours. I promised not to tell anyone, not even my best friend, not even the police, not yet, but I wasn't good at waiting. At 8:00 a.m., my father called. His tone was smooth, almost cheerful. "Grace, darling, I'm finalizing your mother's estate today. I need your signature on a few documents." I gripped the phone so tightly my nails bit into my palm. "Documents? Just paperwork," he said, "nothing for you to worry about. Come by the mansion tonight." I agreed. Then I texted Mom. "He's making his move." Her reply came seconds later. "Let him think he's winning. Let him think he's winning." That night, the house I grew up in looked like a stranger's home. Everything gleamed. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, but the air was thick, heavy. Heavy. Wrong. He greeted me with that politician's smile. "You look tired, Grace. Losing sleep over old things, over dead things," I said coldly. "More people who are supposed to be dead." He paused, eyes narrowing. "Careful with your words," and what we sat in his office. He slid a thick folder across the desk. "These are transfer forms for your mother's properties. Since you're her only heir, I need you to sign to consolidate ownership. Then we can move forward." I flipped through the pages, heart pounding. My mother's signature was already on them. Perfectly forged. I looked up slowly. "You forged her signature?" He chuckled. "You think I need to forge anything? Your mother agreed to this before she passed." "Funny," I said, standing up. "Because I remember her saying she'd rather burn everything than let you have it." His smile vanished. "Sit down." "I'm not signing." "Grace," he said softly, leaning forward. "I know you're grieving, but don't make me force you to do what's necessary." There it was, that tone, that icy control, the same voice that had terrified my mother for years. My hand trembled, not from fear but rage. "You already killed her once. You won't do it again." He froze. "What did you say?" I stared right into his eyes. "I said you won't get away with it." A flicker of panic crossed his face. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You've been talking to someone." I said nothing. He snatched the folder, breathing heavily, and snapped, "Get out now." I turned toward the door, but not before catching the reflection of a small safe behind his desk in the mirror, a code lock half hidden by a family photo. I smiled faintly. "Sure, Dad. I'll go." That night, I didn't sleep. I broke into his office after midnight, using the spare key I still had from childhood. The safe opened on the third try. His password was my mother's birthday. Of course, inside were bank statements, offshore transfers, fake contracts, and a flash drive. I copied everything onto mine and left as quietly as I came. When I returned to my car, my hands were shaking. I texted Mom again. "Got it." Her reply came instantly. "Good. Now, Grace, be careful, he'll know." The message had barely delivered when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "You think I wouldn't notice, Grace?" My blood turned to ice. It was my father. My heart stopped. His text burned on the screen like a warning from hell. "You think I wouldn't notice, Grace?" I looked around. The street outside my car was empty. Just rain, neon reflections, and my own trembling hands. My chest tightened. He knew. Then my phone rang. His voice came through, low, composed, terrifyingly calm. "You were always clever," he said, "but you forgot who taught you how to lie." Swallowed hard. "You don't scare me." He laughed softly. "Don't I? Come home, Grace. Come home, Grace. Let's talk or I'll make sure you regret stealing from me." "Stealing?" I snapped. "You mean evidence?" The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Then quietly, "If you're smart, you'll destroy it. Otherwise, maybe another funeral will be needed." He hung up. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My reflection in the windshield looked pale and broken. But then I remembered my mother's trembling hands clutching that steering wheel, whispering, "He'll come for everything, even you." Not anymore. I drove straight to the safe house. Mom opened the door, still in her robe, eyes wide with fear. "Grace, what happened?" "He knows," I said, throwing the flash drive onto the table. "We need to move fast. These files, offshore accounts, forged signatures, transactions enough to bury him." She stared at the drive, then at me. "Grace, if we go to the police, He'll come after us before they can act. I met her gaze, breath shaking. Then we'll make him destroy himself. We spent the next 48 hours with Martha's help, sending the files anonymously to the FBI and financial authorities. Mom contacted an old lawyer friend, Charlotte Wells, who began drafting a formal statement for when the storm broke. But the storm came early. 2 nights later, headlights flared outside the house. Mom peeked through the curtain and froze. "It's him," she whispered. "Richard." The knock that followed rattled the whole frame. "Grace!" His voice boomed through the door. "Open up! Let's end this ridiculous game." Mom's hand clutched mine, trembling. "Don't, he's dangerous." But I was done running. I opened the door. He stood there in the rain, drenched, furious, eyes bloodshot. The expensive suit clung to him like armor, cracking at the seams. "Where is she?" he hissed. I stepped into the doorway. "Where's who, Dad? The wife you buried? The woman you tried to erase?" His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what she did to me. She ruined me. She loved you." I said, "You ruined yourself." He shoved past me, storming inside, shouting her name. "Evelyn." Mom stepped out from the hallway, fragile but unflinching. "I'm right here." He froze. For a second, the rain outside seemed to stop. His face turned ghostly white. No, this isn't possible. You're dead." Mom's voice was steady, still beneath sorrow. "You tried to make me dead." He laughed bitterly, trembling. "You think you can take my life's work, my company, my name? You're nothing without me." I stepped between them. "That's where you're wrong." Sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. His face twisted, realization dawning. "What did you do?" Mom's eyes never left his, touch between them. "Wasn't taught us what you taught us, cover your tracks. Unfortunately, you left too many." Red and blue lights washed over the room as the front door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, guns drawn. "Richard Miller," an officer shouted. "You're under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, and attempted homicide." He turned to me, desperation finally cracking through the arrogance. "Grace, tell them they're wrong. Tell them you." I shook my head slowly. "You buried the wrong woman, Dad." He lunged toward me, shouting something incoherent, but agents restrained him, twisting his arms behind his back. The rain outside roared again, drowning out his words as they dragged him away. His gaze locked on my mother. "You'll regret this," he spat. Mom just whispered, "No, Richard." I already did. When the door closed, the house fell silent, except for the faint drip of water from the porch. I realized I was shaking, not from fear, but release. Mom sank into my arms, sobbing softly. "It's over." I held her tighter, feeling her heartbeat against mine. The heartbeat that should have stopped weeks ago. "It's just beginning," I said. Outside, dawn was breaking. The first light spilled across the wet ground, washing away the night. For the first time since that funeral, the rain had finally stopped. The weeks that followed were a blur of headlines, court summons, and flashing cameras. Real estate tycoon Richard Miller arrested for fraud and attempted murder. Only every news channel played his photo, the same confident smile he wore at charity galas, now frozen under the words, "Criminal Investigation." Mom and I watched it all unfold from a quiet hotel room. Far from the chaos, she barely spoke, her fingers wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. "Grace," she said one morning, "when I married your father, I thought he was the kind of man who built things. I never realized he was the kind who destroyed them." I reached for her hand. "He won't destroy us anymore." The trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, shareholders who once praised him now whispering like vultures. My father sat at the defendant's table, gray suit wrinkled, hair unkempt, the arrogance gone from his eyes. He still didn't look at us. When my mother took the stand, the room fell silent. She spoke slowly, deliberately, each word cutting through the air like a blade. "I faked my death," she said. "Not out of revenge, out of survival." Gasps rippled through the audience. Reporters scribbled furiously. She described the threats, the forged documents. The night he told her she'd be worth more dead than alive. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She just told the truth. When it was my turn, I stood before the jury and looked at him. My father, the man I once believed could do no wrong. "He taught me how to be brave," I said quietly. But I don't think he expected I'd use that bravery against him. Oh, he finally met my eyes. For the first time, I saw fear not of prison, but of the truth he couldn't control anymore. Our lawyer, Charlotte Wells, played the audio files and displayed the evidence. We gathered the offshore transfers, the falsified contracts, the argument recording between him and my late grandparents. The pieces of his empire collapsed one by one under the weight of his own deceit. When the verdict came, the room held its breath, guilty on all charges. He closed his eyes. His shoulders sagged. No outburst, no denial, just silence. The judge's voice was clear and cold. Richard Miller, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. The sound of the gavel echoed through the chamber like thunder after a storm. Mom exhaled, a tremor running through her as if she'd been holding her breath for years. I reached for her hand, and she squeezed mine back, tears glistening but unshed. As they led him away in handcuffs, he glanced over his shoulder. For a heartbeat, his eyes softened, the faintest ghost of the father I'd once loved. Then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, microphones thrust toward us. Mrs. Miller! Miss Miller! Miss Miller! How does it feel to bring down one of Portland's most powerful men? Mom paused, the corners of her mouth lifting into a faint, tired smile. It doesn't feel like victory, she said. It feels like freedom. The next morning, the headlines called her the woman who returned from the dead. But for me, she wasn't a ghost come back to life. She was proof that the truth, no matter how buried, always finds a way to rise. Months passed after the verdict. Yet every morning I still woke up expecting to hear the gavel's echo. The nightmare had ended, but its shadows lingered. Then, Mom and I moved to the Oregon coast, far from the glass towers and sharp suits of Portland. She bought a small cottage by the sea with peeling white paint and a garden that breathed color again. Her days were slow and gentle, teaching local kids to paint, filling canvases with the same wild daisies she once grew in our old backyard. One afternoon, I found her standing by the water, brush in hand, staring at the horizon. "What are you painting?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Freedom." I opened a small design studio nearby and named it Evelyn and Grace Designs. It wasn't just work, it was a promise. We would build something honest, beautiful, and alive. Life slowly became quiet again, simple, safe. But every now and then, the past whispered. Reporters still sent letters. Investors begged Mom to tell her story for documentaries. She always refused. "I don't need to relive it," she said softly. "I just need to live." One evening, as the sun dipped low over the ocean, I sat on the porch with her and a cup of tea. The air smelled of salt and wet earth. I looked at her, still half in disbelief. "Mom, I never asked who sent that text that night. The one that brought me to you." She looked up, the sunset reflecting in her eyes. "I didn't," she said quietly. I frowned. "What do you mean? It came from your number. My phone was off." Martha took it. I didn't have it that night. We sat in silence as the waves hissed against the rocks. A chill slid down my spine, but not from fear, from awe. Maybe fate had dialed that message itself, unwilling to let a lie win. Mom reached over and took my hand. "Whatever it was," she said, "it saved us." I nodded, smiling through the lump in my throat. "No, Mom, you saved us." In the fading light, I saw her the way I always wanted to remember her. Not a victim, not a ghost, but a woman reborn. When I drove home later, the sky glowed deep orange, the same color as the daisies she loved. I rolled down the window and let the sea wind fill the car. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't haunted. The truth had set us free. And though we'd lost everything once, money, reputation, even each other, we'd found something rarer: peace. As the road curved away from the coast, I whispered into the wind, "Good night, Mom." And for the first time since that funeral, I swore I heard her voice again. Soft, certain, alive. "Good night, sweetheart." The storm had passed and we were finally